Hey guys, tonight we slip into the dusty streets of ancient Rome, where the clatter of cartwheels and the chatter of merchants fill the air. You're strolling through a bustling forum, toga slightly askew, as stern-faced magistrates scribble on wax tablets, deciding fates with a flick of their stylus. This is the world of Rome's earliest legal codes, dry as old parchment, but oddly soothing in their quirks. Imagine, you're caught whispering a forbidden insult and suddenly you're fined a cow. Here you probably won't survive this bureaucratic maze without a chuckle or two. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Drop a comment with your city and local time. I'm curious where you're drifting off from tonight. Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You're standing in Rome, around 753 BC, when the city's just a cluster of mud brick huts on 7 scruffy hills. Justice here isn't a grand courthouse affair. It's neighbors shouting over stolen goats, settled by whoever's got the loudest voice or sharpest spear. But as Rome grows, so does the need for order. Enter the first legal codes, born from necessity as the city's population swells. These aren't your modern innocent until proven guilty vibes. They're practical, blunt, and occasionally bizarre. One mainstream fact: early Romans leaned on custom or mos maiorum to guide behavior. Think unwritten rules passed down like your grandma's meatloaf recipe, but for settling disputes. If you swiped your neighbor's pig, you'd owe them double its value, no questions asked. Now here's the quirky bit: some punishments hinged on sacred oaths. If you lied under Jupiter's name, you'd face divine wrath, or at least a hefty fine to appease the gods. No one wanted to risk a lightning bolt over a fib. You're picturing it. You're in a dusty square swearing on a stone altar, while a priest glares like you forgot his birthday. Historians still argue whether these early codes were written down or just memorized by grumpy elders, because no one's found a Roman law for dummies tablet from this era. The lack of records makes it a scholarly guessing game. Did the kings dictate rules, or did clans make it up as they went? You move through the forum, where disputes are settled under the open sky. A farmer accuses another of moving a boundary stone, a serious offense since land was life. The penalty? A fine. Or maybe you're hauling rocks to fix the city wall. It's not glamorous, but it's practical. Picture yourself dodging stray dogs while carrying a basket of turnips to pay off a debt. Funny thing, Romans loved their turnips almost as much as their justice, so you're probably handing over your best veggies. The system's rough, but it's got a rhythm, like a slow drumbeat keeping the city in line. You're starting to feel the weight of those togas, the heat of the sun, and the odd calm of knowing exactly what happens if you step out of line. It's not perfect, but it's Rome's first stab at fairness, and you're right there in the middle of it. Oh, and one more thing. Some early laws banned singing rude songs about your neighbors. Imagine getting fined for bad karaoke. You'd probably whisper your insults under your breath, hoping no one snitches. As you wander past a temple, you hear the low hum of priests chanting, and it's almost soothing. The city's alive, chaotic, but somehow orderly in its own peculiar way. You're settling into this world now, ready to dig deeper into the rules that kept it spinning. You're lingering in the forum now, the sun dipping a bit lower, casting long shadows over the stone slabs that everyone's buzzing about. These are the 12 tables, Rome's first big attempt at writing down the rules around 451 BC, after a bunch of plebeians got fed up with patricians making stuff up. You're one of those common folks squinting at the bronze plaques nailed up for all to see. Finally, no more "because I said so" from the elite. It's like the city's version of posting house rules on the fridge, but with more Latin and less flexibility. A mainstream historical fact: these tables were crafted by a commission of 10 men, the decemviri, who supposedly borrowed ideas from Greek laws, making Rome's system a bit of a cultural mashup. But here's the quirky tidbit. One rule said if you caught a thief at night, you could straight up clobber them without repercussions. But daytime, you had to haul them to a magistrate like an unruly puppy. Imagine you're fumbling in the dark, heart pounding, swinging a club at some shadowy figure rustling your olive jars. It's oddly empowering. Yet you're wondering if dawn's breaking soon enough to change the game. Historians still argue whether the 12 tables were truly egalitarian, or just a patrician ploy to keep the masses quiet, since enforcement often favored the wealthy anyway. The debate rages on in dusty academic corners, with some saying it was a genuine reform, others calling it window dressing. You're circling the plaques, finger tracing the etched words, feeling the cool metal under your touch. Minor offenses get their share of peculiar attention here. Like if you damaged someone's crops with a spell, yes, they believed in magic back then, you'd face a fine or perhaps a public shaming. Picture yourself as a farmer, muttering incantations over your rival's field, only to end up paying in grain sacks. It's not the dramatic witch hunts of later eras. It's more like a neighborly spat, settled with coins and a grudge. And get this, singing scandalous songs about someone could land you in hot water, fined or flogged if it tarnished their reputation. You're humming a tune under your breath now. Careful not to let it slip into mockery. Romans took their honor seriously, but with a side of theatrical flair. The air's filled with the scent of baking bread from nearby stalls, and you're dodging kids playing knucklebones while pondering these rules. Another odd one. If a tree on your land shaded your neighbor's plot too much, you had to trim it back or face penalties. It's like ancient HOA drama, where branches become battlegrounds. You're climbing a ladder, shears in hand, grumbling about how your olives need that extra sun too. Light joke incoming. Bet those feuds led to the first Roman leaf blower inventions, or at least some creative cursing. The tables cover everything from debt to inheritance, but always with that practical Roman twist. No fluff, just facts. You pause by a fountain, splashing water on your face to shake off the midday heat. For insults like calling someone a thief without proof, you'd owe a fine of 25 asses. That's bronze coins, not what you're thinking. It keeps the peace, sort of, by putting a price on pettiness. Imagine you're in a heated argument, words flying like arrows, and suddenly you're counting your pocket change to avoid escalation. Quirky, right? And for minor assaults like a slap, it's a set fine rather than an eye-for-an-eye brawl. You're rubbing your cheek phantom style, relieved it's not escalating to gladiator levels. As you meander further, the crowd thins a bit, and you're reflecting on how these tables set the stage for centuries of law. One rule mandated that women couldn't scratch their faces in mourning. Too dramatic, apparently, or maybe to prevent self-harm in grief. You're at a funeral procession, veils fluttering and everyone's keeping it composed per the code. It's a gentle nudge towards stoicism which fits Rome's vibe. Historians debate if this was protective or just controlling, adding another layer to the scholarly puzzle. The evening breeze picks up, carrying whispers of more rules etched in stone. For example, if you sold something faulty like a lame horse, the buyer could sue for redress, early consumer protection, Roman style. You're haggling at the market, eyeing a chariot with wobbly wheels, knowing the tables have your back. And don't forget the ban on excessive funeral expenses. No lavish pyres if it bankrupts the family. Picture scaling back the feast to save sesterces. Practical but a buzzkill for the bereaved. You're settling on a bench now, the stone cool beneath you as the details sink in. These minor stipulations weave a tapestry of daily life, where every quirk keeps society humming along. One more light aside. If a mule kicked your shin without provocation, the owner paid up, treating animals like extensions of their masters. You're chuckling softly, imagining the courtroom debates over provoked kicks. It's all so human, these ancient foibles, making the past feel less distant. The sun's lower still, painting the forum in golden hues, and you're ready to delve deeper into specifics, like how theft played out under these very tables. The golden light fades into a softer amber as you shift your gaze from the 12 tables, your mind lingering on those etched warnings. Theft, that sneaky shadow in any society, gets its own spotlight here, nuanced, layered like a game of hide-and-seek with consequences. You're imagining yourself as a petty pilferer, fingers itching toward a merchant's unattended coin purse. But hold on. The repercussions aren't just a slap on the wrist. They're calculated, almost artistic in their subtlety, designed to restore balance without tipping into chaos. A mainstream historical fact. Under the tables, theft was divided into manifest, caught red-handed, and non-manifest, discovered later, with penalties scaling accordingly. Double the value for the sneaky kind, quadruple if you're nabbed in the act, making honesty the easier path for the lazy thief. You're weaving through the market stalls now, the air thick with spices and sweat as vendors hawk their wares. If you're caught swiping a loaf of bread at dusk, that manifest theft might land you in hot water, literally perhaps a public dunking or a fine that stings more than hunger. But the quirky tidbit? For stealing from a bathhouse where folks left their togas unattended, the penalty was milder, almost forgiving because who hasn't forgotten their towel? It's like the law winking at human absent-mindedness, fining you just enough to remember next time. You're chuckling softly in your mind, picturing a slippery escape attempt in nothing but sandals. Talk about a bare-bones getaway. Historians still argue whether these distinctions encouraged more clever crimes or actually deterred them, with some evidence from later texts suggesting thieves got craftier, dodging the harsher manifest labels by planting evidence post-heist. The debate simmers like a slow-cooked stew. No clear winner, just layers of interpretation from fragmented scrolls. You're pausing by a fruit stand, the vendor eyeing you warily as you pretend to inspect figs. For minor thefts, like nicking a neighbor's chicken, you might end up in forced labor, tending their farm until the debt's squared. Imagine you're knee-deep in muck, clucking hens mocking your misfortune, all because that midnight snack seemed worth it. The crowd thins as evening approaches, lanterns flickering to life like sleepy fireflies. Punishments evolve with the offense's scale. For larger hauls, say a cartload of wine amphorae, you could face enslavement to the victim, becoming their household drudge, sweeping floors and fetching water until redemption. It's restorative justice, Roman style, turning the thief into a reluctant servant. You're hauling buckets now, arms aching, but there's an odd poetry to it. Repaying with sweat what you took with stealth. Light joke. Bet that's where the phrase working off a debt came from, though Romans probably said it in Latin with more gravitas. You drift toward the edge of the market, where shadows play tricks on the cobblestones. Another nuance. If the stolen goods were sacred like temple offerings, penalties doubled again, blending law with piety. You're tiptoeing past a shrine to Mercury, god of thieves, ironically, whispering a quick prayer not to get caught, because irony aside, the gods didn't mess around. For children or slaves caught thieving, the master bore the brunt, flogging or fining on their behalf, keeping households in check like a family chore chart gone wrong. The night air cools your skin as you meander homeward, stars peeking through the haze. In cases of repeated theft, you might face the dreaded knock-all surrender, where the owner hands over the thief or even a faulty beam in a house if it caused injury, as compensation. Quirky, huh? Treating people like property swaps, but it avoided blood feuds. You're imagining bargaining sessions. Take my lazy cousin instead of the cash. It's got that ancient barter charm, with a side of sarcasm from the aggrieved party. Scholars debate the effectiveness, pointing to later laws that toughened up, suggesting the table's subtleties weren't deterrent enough for hardened crooks. You're settling on your doorstep now, the door creaking open to a dimly lit room. For theft by deception, like false weights in trade, fines piled on, ensuring merchants kept scales honest or at least pretended to. Picture you're weighing grain, tipping the balance just a smidge, only to face a penalty that leaves you lighter in the purse. A soft breeze rustles the curtains as you ease into a chair, the day's bustle fading. Punishments included public announcements, shaming the thief in the forum, whispers following you like ghosts. It's social pressure, Roman edition, more stinging than stripes sometimes. And for nighttime burglars armed with weapons, that's where it gets dicey. Self-defense allowed lethal force, turning your home into a fortress. You're barring the door, club at the ready, heart thumping in the quiet. Light aside, if you stole a philosopher's scroll, did they make you read it aloud as punishment? Probably not, but it'd be fitting. Boredom is justice. The system's got flexibility. Magistrates could adjust based on circumstance, like poverty driving the crime, opting for labor over loss of limb. You're pondering this mercy, rare but present. As moonlight filters in, deeper into the night, you recall how theft from the state, like pilfering public grain, invited harsher fates, exile or arena fodder. But for household thefts, it's intimate. You're bound to serve, learning the victim's routines up close. Imagine cooking for the family you robbed. Awkward dinners, anyone? The law aimed to mend, not just mend fences, but rebuild trust, thread by thread. As drowsiness creeps in, you're reflecting on these repercussions' ripple effects, how they shaped a society wary yet woven together. The moon climbs higher, casting silvery spells over the city, and you're drifting toward the next layer of Rome's legal quirks. Section 4. The silvery moonlight bathes your room in a gentle glow, shadows dancing like forgotten secrets on the walls. Those ripple effects from theft's subtle world linger in your thoughts, but now they weave into the more intimate threads of family life, where Rome's laws tiptoe around the heart's missteps. You're lying there, blanket pulled up, imagining the hush of a Roman household at night. Whispers behind curtains, the flicker of oil lamps casting long, wavering forms. Adultery, that delicate dance of betrayal, wasn't just gossip fodder. It was woven into the legal fabric with penalties as creative as they were cautionary. You're slipping into this realm now, where marital bonds are tested, and the codes offer remedies that blend sternness with a peculiar Roman flair for drama. A mainstream historical fact: in early Roman law, adultery was primarily a family matter, with the pater familias, the household head, holding power to punish, often through private means like divorce or worse, before state intervention grew under Augustus. It kept things domestic, like settling a squabble over dinner rather than dragging it to the forum. You're the pater familias, stern-faced at the family altar, deciding fates with a nod, the weight of tradition on your shoulders. But oh, the quirky tidbit. One odd penalty involved the adulterer being forced to pay a fine in radishes, yes, those humble roots, symbolizing perhaps a return to basics or just a veggie-based humiliation. Imagine handing over a basket of them, red-faced in more ways than one, while the offended spouse smirks from the doorway. Historians still argue whether these family-centric rules empowered women or left them vulnerable, since wives couldn't always initiate proceedings without male kin, sparking debates on gender equity in ancient courts. You're pondering this as the night deepens, the distant hoot of an owl adding to the ambience. For the wife caught in indiscretion, penalties could include loss of dowry or exile from the home. Banished to a relative's villa, packing tunics in haste while servants avert their eyes. It's not the fiery executions of legend. It's quieter, more isolating, like being ghosted by your own life. You shift under the covers, the fabric soft against your skin, as you envision a tense confrontation. The husband, discovering the affair, might opt for the ius vitae necisque, right of life and death, but rarely exercised it fully, preferring symbolic gestures. Light joke. Bet that led to some awkward family dinners where the radishes were served with extra side-eye. Creative twists abound. In some cases, the adulterous pair faced public mockery, paraded through streets with signs or bells, turning shame into spectacle without spilling blood. You're in the crowd, whispering with neighbors, the air buzzing with subdued laughter. Rome's version of reality TV, but sleepier. The laws evolved, though, tightening under imperial eyes. You're drifting to later eras, where Augustus's reforms made adultery a public crime, punishable by relegation to islands. Think a forced vacation minus the fun. Imagine sailing away on a creaky ship, waves lapping gently, contemplating your choices amid sea spray. For men, it could mean property forfeiture, halving their wealth to the state or heirs, a financial sting sharper than any sword. You're counting coins in your mind, the clink echoing softly, realizing how these penalties hit where it hurt. The purse and pride. Sensory details pull you deeper, the scent of lavender from a nearby garden wafting in, mingling with the earthy night air. Another oddity. If the affair involved a slave, penalties lightened for the free partner, reflecting Rome's rigid social strata. You're navigating these hierarchies, feeling the invisible barriers like walls in a maze. Light aside, probably why some Romans stuck to poetry about love instead, safer than the real thing and no radish fines. Scholarly debates swirl here too, questioning if these laws curbed infidelity or just drove it underground, with evidence from satirical writings hinting at the latter. You're easing further into the narrative, the moon now high, its light filtering through leaves outside your window. In cases of caught in the act, the law allowed immediate retribution. Husband could slay the lover if armed only with household items, not weapons fetched purposely. Picture grabbing a lampstand in the dim bedroom, heart racing, but pausing because, well, rules. It's that Roman precision, vengeance, but make it legal. For the wife, though, clemency was rarer. She might face confinement or worse, her status plummeting like a dropped amphora. The quiet of the night envelops you, crickets chirping a lullaby as you reflect on these dilemmas' human side. Remarriage bans followed, ensuring the stain lingered. No quick rebounds in ancient Rome. You're imagining the paperwork, scribes yawning over wax tablets, inking out decrees that reshaped lives. And for noble families, scandals amplified, with penalties including loss of rank, tumbling down the social ladder step by echoing step. Light joke incoming. If radishes were the fine, did vegetarians get a discount? Probably not. Romans weren't that progressive. These creative measures aim to deter without destroying society's core, preserving families where possible. You're feeling the tension ease. The story's unfolding like a slow-scrolling parchment. Another layer, false accusations of adultery carried their own backlash, finding the accuser to discourage witch hunts. It's a built-in safeguard, promoting caution in a whisper-prone city. As the stars twinkle above, you're connecting back to those theft ripples. Both crimes erode trust, but adultery strikes at the heart's hearth. The wind sighs through branches, carrying hints of more family oddities, like inheritance quirks tied to fidelity. You're almost there on the cusp, but the night's embrace tugs you toward deeper slumbers, ready for the next peculiar turn. The night's embrace deepens, stars scattering like spilled sesame seeds across the velvet sky, as those family dilemmas fade into a darker corner of Rome's legal tapestry. You're turning in your bed, the mattress creaking softly, but your mind wanders back to the city where shadows lengthen and whispers turn grave. Parricide, that chilling act of slaying one's kin, demands a punishment as peculiar as it is profound, reserved for the ultimate betrayal. You're stepping into this ritual now, the air thick with symbolism, as if the gods themselves scripted the scene. The infamous poena cullei, or punishment of the sack, awaits those who dare strike down parents or close blood, a fate blending elements of earth, water, and beast in a bizarre symphony of justice. A mainstream historical fact, this penalty, mentioned in the 12 tables and refined over centuries, involved drowning the culprit in a leather sack, but not alone. Companions of a serpent, a monkey, a dog, and a rooster joined the grim party, each animal symbolizing aspects of the crime's horror. You're picturing the preparation, magistrates solemn as statues ordering the sack stitched tight, the condemned trembling in chains. It's not swift. It's deliberate, a procession through the streets where crowds murmur, the air humming with tension like a distant thunderstorm. But here's the quirky tidbit. The choice of animals wasn't random. The snake for treachery, the monkey mimicking human folly, the dog for disloyalty, and the rooster for vigilance betrayed. Imagine the chaos inside that sack, feathers fluttering, hisses and barks mingling in a confined frenzy. It's almost comically absurd, if not for the tragedy. You're there at the riverbank, the Tiber's waters lapping gently, as the bundle is heaved in, sinking with a muffled splash. Historians still argue whether this ritual stemmed from Etruscan influences or pure Roman invention, with some texts suggesting it evolved from simpler drownings, while others point to symbolic precedents in Greek myths. The debate lingers like mist over the forum, unresolved amid fragmented records. You're walking alongside the procession now, the condemned's face veiled to shield from the sun, a mercy, or perhaps to deny them the world's beauty one last time. The path winds from prison to river, guards flanking like silent sentinels, the sack slung over a cart that creaks rhythmically. Sensory overload, the scent of damp leather, the distant call of gulls, the feel of cobbles underfoot. For patricides, this was the pinnacle of peculiarity, ensuring the soul couldn't rest, tormented by beasts even in death. You're pondering the symbolism deeper, the sack as womb reversing birth through murder, a poetic if twisted retribution. Light joke, bet the animals unionized against this gig. No more sack time. They'd squawk if they could. The ritual's rarity made it legendary. Not every family slayer met this end, only the most notorious sparing resources for spectacle. You're at the water's edge, toes dipping in the cool current, watching ripples spread from the submersion. Alternatives existed for lesser kin crimes, like exile. But parricide demanded this extravagance, underscoring Rome's reverence for pietas, family duty as sacred as temple vows. The moon reflects on the waves, silvery and serene, contrasting the turmoil below. In later eras, under emperors, the punishment adapted. Sometimes fire or beasts in the arena substituted, but the sack endured in law. You're recalling cases, like that of a son who poisoned his father, Sack bound with viper in tow, the serpent's fangs a mirror to his venomous deed. It's immersive. You hear the final pleas muffled by fabric, the splash echoing like a sigh. Quirky evolution. By Cicero's time, the animals varied regionally. Some provinces skipped the monkey, opting for extra snakes, tailoring terror to local tastes. Scholars debate enforcement frequency. Was it more threat than practice? A deterrent dangling like a sword over filial heads? Evidence from legal commentaries suggests executions were public events, drawing crowds for moral lessons wrapped in macabre theatre. You're in the throng, elbow to elbow with bakers and senators, the air buzzing with subdued chatter. Light aside, imagine the cleanup crew fishing out soggy sacks at dawn, grumbling about overtime. The ritual's elements tied to elements, water for purification, animals for chaos, ensuring the parricide spirit wandered eternally. Denied proper burial. You shift positions, pillow fluffing under your head, as the narrative pulls you along the river's bend. Symbolism layers on, the dog representing guardianship forsaken, biting at the heels of betrayal. You're visualizing the stitching, needle-piercing leather with deliberate pokes, each one a punctuation to the crime's sentence. For women parricides rare but recorded, the same fate applied, equality in eccentricity. The Tiber claims another, bubbles rising like final breaths, the current carrying secrets downstream. The night's hush amplifies every thought, crickets providing a soft underscore. In imperial times, Trajan reportedly commuted some sentences, but the sack's shadow loomed. You're drifting with the flow, imagining escapes, a tear in the seam, a beast's distraction. But reality bites harder. Another facet, pre-execution flogging with blood-red rods, staining the skin like guilt manifest. Here it's also tactile. The whips whistle, the crowds gasp, the river's indifferent murmur. Light joke incoming. If the rooster crowed inside, did it signal a new dawn for justice? Probably just added to the cacophony. These details paint Rome's legal soul, practical yet poetic, punishing body and spirit alike. You're reflecting on how this ties back to adultery's domestic woes, both eroding family pillars, but parricide shattering them utterly. The stars wheel overhead, time blurring as you edge toward dawn's whisper. The ritual's echoes fading into the next chapter of towering trials. The ritual's echoes fade like whispers carried downstream, the Tiber's gentle flow mirroring the inexorable pull of justice toward greater heights, or depths, depending on the crime. You're emerging from that watery grave's shadow now, climbing the steep paths of Rome's hills, where the air thins and the wind whispers secrets of state. Treason, that towering betrayal of the Republic itself, demands punishments as elevated as the offense, lifting the condemned to precarious perches before the final fall. You're scaling the Tarpeian Rock now, that infamous cliff on the Capitoline Hill, toes gripping the edge, the city sprawling below like a mosaic of rooftops and forums. The drop is dizzying, a plummet reserved for those who plotted against the state, their bodies dashed on the rocks as a warning etched in stone. A mainstream historical fact, treason, or perduelio, was among the gravest crimes in Roman law, often punished by hurling from the Tarpeian Rock, a method dating back to the monarchy and persisting into the Republic, symbolizing expulsion from the community, both literally and figuratively. You're there at the summit, guards prodding you forward, the crowd below a distant blur of upturned faces. The wind tugs at your tunic, carrying the faint scent of pine from nearby groves, as magistrates intone the sentence with stoic gravity. It's not just death. It's a spectacle, ensuring loyalty through terror's theatre. But here's the quirky tidbit. Legend has it the rock was named after Tarpeia, a traitorous maiden crushed under shields for betraying Rome to the Sabines, her punishment becoming the site's grim legacy, with traitors following her fateful path. Imagine the irony. A woman's folly birthing a tradition of aerial executions, where the fall mimics her burial under metal. You're chuckling inwardly, picturing Tarpeia haggling for gold bracelets only to get a shield avalanche. Talk about buyer's remorse. Historians still argue whether the Tarpeian Rock was always the go-to spot, or if other cliffs served in a pinch, with some evidence from Livy's history suggesting regional variations, while others claim it was centralized for maximum visibility. The scholarly squabble persists, pieced together from biased chronicles and archaeological hints. You're teetering on the brink now, the void calling with a silent roar, as the executioner gives that final shove. The plummet is brief but eternal in memory, wind rushing past, the ground rushing up, a crunch lost to the cheers below. For high-profile traitors like those in the Catilinarian conspiracy, this was the end. Bodies left for birds or dragged to the river, denying honorable rights. Sensory immersion, the sting of salt in the air from distant seas, the rough sandstone underfoot, the sun's warmth contrasting the chill of dread. Light joke, bet vertigo sufferers got a pass. Sorry, magistrate, doctor's note says no heights. The law's sharpened over time. Under Sulla, treason expanded to include aiding enemies, with penalties like property confiscation topping the fall. You're descending in thought now, but ascending in status. Wait, no, you're the accused, assets seized, family disgraced, all from one whispered plot. Another layer. For generals turning coat like those defecting in wars, the rock awaited if captured, their fall echoing their fallen ambitions. You're recalling Brutus and Cassius. Though their ends were self-inflicted, the shadow of the cliff loomed in cultural memory. The evening haze settles over the hills, softening edges as you wander paths lined with cypress. Quirky alternatives emerged. In later Republic, some traitors faced strangulation before the toss, a merciful prelude to prevent mid-air regrets. Picture the noose tightening gently, well, as gently as such things go before the heave-ho. It's that Roman efficiency, tidy up loose ends literally. Scholars debate execution rates. Was it frequent spectacle or rare deterrent, with records skewed by victorious historians? You're pondering this amid twilight's glow, fireflies flickering like distant torches. Light aside, if you survived the fall miraculously, you'd probably wish you hadn't. Facing exile or worse as a divine reject, the cliff's symbolism ran deep. Elevated betrayal met with downward justice, restoring cosmic balance. You're leaning against a boulder now, the stone cool and unyielding, reflecting on how treason trials packed the Senate, accusations flying like arrows in debate. For women accused, rarer but potent, like Vestal virgins breaking vows, buried alive instead, a grounded counterpart to the men's aerial fate. The stars emerge one by one, pinpricks in the darkening canvas, as you trace the rock's outline against the sky. Imperial eras tweaked it. Augustus preferred quieter exiles for political foes, but the rock endured in law, a shorthand for ultimate downfall. You're imagining the climb up, chains clinking rhythmically, each step a countdown. Another facet. Post-fall bodies hooked and dragged to the Gemonian stairs for display, public shaming extended, crows pecking as lessons, sensory pull, the distant hum of the city below, vendors closing shops, the faint aroma of roasting chestnuts wafting up. Light joke incoming. Traitors probably envied Icarus, at least he had wings for his plunge. These towering trials tied back to parricide's intimacy. Both betrayals, one familial, one national, but treason scaled to empire's heights. You're feeling the vertigo subside, the narrative grounding you as night deepens. Deeper quirks, some executions timed for festivals, blending punishment with piety, gods appeased by the offering. You're in the procession, drums beating a somber tattoo, the condemned's pleas lost to the wind. Scholarly notes vary. Pompey's laws added nuances, but core remained, fall from grace, literalized. The moon rises, casting pallid light, illuminating paths to sterner measures elsewhere in Rome's codes. The moon's pallid light guides you down from those lofty cliffs, paths winding through the sleeping city, where sterner measures lurk in the shadows of households and fields. You're slipping into the underbelly of Roman society now, where the codes carve out distinct paths for the enslaved, those whose lives were property, their missteps met with disciplines as varied as the chains that bound them. The air grows heavier with the scent of hay and sweat, as you imagine trudging through a villa's courtyard at dawn, the clink of iron anklets a constant companion. Slave punishments weren't the grand spectacles of the arena. They were intimate, efficient, tailored to maintain order without wasting valuable labor. You're the overseer, whip coiled at your side, deciding fates with a glance, the weight of economy on your mind. A mainstream historical fact, under Roman law, slaves were considered res mancipi, things that could be owned, and their punishments fell under the master's absolute authority, with the 12 tables granting owners the right to chastise or even kill without state interference, as long as it wasn't deemed excessively cruel by community standards. It's a system rooted in utility. A dead slave produced nothing, so corrections aim to correct, not destroy. You're in the atrium, sunlight filtering through vines as a slave kneels for judgment, perhaps for breaking a pot or shirking chores. The penalty? A lashing with the flagellum, leather strips whistling through the air, leaving marks that sting but heal, ensuring tomorrow's work goes on. But here's the quirky tidbit. Some masters employed the furka, a forked wooden yoke slaves carried as mobile punishment, parading their shame like a living billboard, arms outstretched, neck bowed, trudging fields with this cumbersome reminder. Imagine you're hoisting it yourself, wood digging into shoulders, every step a lesson in humility, while free folk chuckle from afar. It's oddly theatrical, turning discipline into a one-man show. Historians still argue whether these measures fostered resentment, leading to uprisings like Spartacus's revolt, or actually quelled dissent by isolating offenders, with evidence from household records suggesting a mix. Some slaves rebelled, others endured in quiet defiance. The debate hums in academic halls, pieced from villa excavations and biased elite writings. You're wandering the estate now, dew-kissed grass underfoot, as birds chirp a dawn chorus. For theft within the household, say sneaking wine from the cellar, the punishment might be branding with hot iron, a mark on the forehead declaring FVR for fur thief. You wince at the sizzle, the acrid smell of singed skin, but it's meant to deter, not disable, allowing return to duties with a permanent scarlet letter. Light joke, bet that made job interviews tricky. Previous experience? Yeah, but mind the forehead. Masters varied. Kind ones opted for confinement in the ergastulum, an underground workhouse where slaves toiled in dim light, chains rattling like ghosts in the gloom. The morning mist rises, carrying hints of baking bread from the kitchens. Ironic, since food-related offenses drew specific ire. If you, as a slave, spoiled a meal through negligence, expect reduced rations or extra shifts grinding grain, muscles aching in rhythmic turns. It's practical sarcasm from the law. Mess with food, go hungry yourself. You're turning the millstone now, flour dusting your arms like soft snow, the grind a meditative drone. For runaway attempts, the codes got sterner. Collars inscribed with "Return me to master," or bells to jingle your location, turning escape into a noisy farce. Picture fleeing through olive groves, every step a betrayal by tinkling metal, comical if not for the desperation. Sensory details envelop you, the earthy aroma of turned soil, the distant lowing of cattle, the feel of calloused hands on tools. In urban settings, slave punishments adapted. For gladiators or performers erring in the arena, it might mean demotion to menial tasks, swapping swords for brooms. You're sweeping the amphitheater sands, echoes of cheers mocking your fall from grace. Light aside, probably where the term "clean up your act" originated, though Romans said it with more lashes. Scholarly views differ on cruelty's extent. Some argue laws like the Lex Petronia under Nero curbed excesses, requiring magistrate approval for severe penalties, hinting at evolving humanity. You pause by a fountain, water trickling soothingly. As you reflect on gender nuances, female slaves faced unique paths, like assignment to weaving rooms for infractions, fingers flying over looms in endless penance. It's quieter discipline, threads weaving fate as surely as chains. For crimes against the master, like poisoning, real or suspected, the cross loomed but rarely for slaves. Too wasteful. Instead, mines awaited. Deep shafts where you'd hack at rock in stifling dark, lungs filling with dust. Imagine the descent, torch flickering, the chill seeping into bones despite the heat. A living tomb for the living. The sun climbs higher, warming your skin as you meander fields dotted with toiling figures. Quirky fringe. Some owners used talking punishments, forcing slaves to recite rules aloud while working, turning labor into lectures. You're muttering edicts under your breath, striking soil in time, educational but exhausting. Light joke incoming, like ancient podcasts but without the skip button. These measures tied back to treason's heights. Slaves aiding plots faced amplified fates, hurled from rocks alongside free traitors. Equality in execution if not in life. Deeper layers unfold. In households, punishments often communal, with peers witnessing to reinforce bonds or break spirits. You're in the slave quarters, lamplight casting long shadows as a flogging unfolds. gasps echoing softly. It's that Roman blend of control and calculation, preserving the workforce like prized livestock. Historians ponder if this bred loyalty or simmering revolt, citing servile wars as evidence of the latter. You're feeling the day's rhythm slow, the narrative pulling you toward rest, but the paths diverge further into military realms. As noon approaches, shadows shorten, and you're connecting these stern trails to earlier family woes, both realms of control, one over kin, one over chattel, but echoing in their peculiarities. The breeze stirs leaves, whispering of drills and decimations ahead. The city's pulse steady in the distance. The breeze stirs leaves into a gentle rustle, carrying echoes of estate disciplines toward the disciplined ranks of Rome's legions, where order marches in lockstep and lapses invite collective reckoning. You're falling in line now, shield heavy on your arm, the tramp of boots syncing with your heartbeat as the camp awakens to dawn's first light. Military life under Roman codes isn't just about conquest. It's a world of drills and decimations, where punishments forge unity from fear, turning soldiers into a machine oiled by obedience. You're the legionary, sweat beading under your helmet, knowing one slip could drag your comrades down with you. The air smells of leather and iron, campfires smoldering nearby, as centurions bark orders like distant thunder. A mainstream historical fact, decimation. The infamous group punishment involved drawing lots to execute every 10th man in a cowardly unit, a practice rooted in the Republic and used sparingly by generals like Crassus to restore morale after battlefield failures. Its brutal efficiency, cull a few to save the many, lottery style. You're in the formation, stones clattering in a helmet as lots are drawn. Your hand trembles dipping in, the odds grim but fair in their randomness. The condemned face clubs from their own mates, a bonding through blood that haunts the survivors. Picture the circle closing, thuds echoing across the plain. The sun indifferent overhead. But here's the quirky tidbit. For lesser infractions like losing equipment, soldiers might face the fustuarium, a gauntlet of clubs where you run between ranks. Comrades swinging to correct your carelessness. Survival meant bruises. Not breaks, a team-building exercise gone rogue. Imagine sprinting that gauntlet, arms shielding your head, the whoosh of wood missing by inches, laughter mixing with grunts if you make it through. It's oddly motivational, turning mistakes into memorable lessons. Historians still argue whether decimation boosted fighting spirit or bred resentment, with accounts from Polybius suggesting it worked in crises, while later critics like Vegetius called it outdated barbarism. The debate marches on, fueled by sparse battlefield reports and biased victor narratives. You're drilling now, the dust kicking up under synchronized steps as the Optio's vine staff prods laggards. For desertion, the codes demand death, beheading or crucifixion, but in cohorts it's group-shamed. Your unit shares reduced rations, forging solidarity through shared hunger. You're gnawing on half a loaf, stomach rumbling, glaring at the empty spot where the deserter once stood. Light joke? Bet that's why Romans invented fast food to avoid those punitive diets. Centurions wielded broad powers. A backtalker might dig latrines solo, spade-biting earth in endless rhythm. The camp's laughter, your only company. The midday sun beats down, shadows sparse on the training field. As you practice formations, testudo wedge the works. Punishments adapt to rank. Aquilifers guarding the eagle standard face. Harsher fates for failure, like flogging with weighted whips that tear but don't kill, preserving the symbol's sanctity. You're clutching the eagle, feathers glinting, knowing loss means disbandment or worse. A unit's soul shattered. Sensory pull, the metallic tang of sweat-soaked armor, the distant clang of swords in spar, the feel of rough wool against skin. For mutiny whispers, preemptive drills intensify, endless marches with full packs, feet blistering on gravel roads, turning grumbles to exhaustion, quirky group twists in naval fleets. Rowers facing laxity might pull oars double time, benches creaking under strain, waves lapping the hull like mocking applause. You're at the galley, muscles burning, the trireme slicing water as punishment propels you forward. It's that Roman irony. Discipline drives the empire, literally. Light aside, probably inspired the first team-building retreats, minus the spa days. Scholars ponder frequency. Was decimation a myth amplified by drama or routine? Evidence from Caesar's writings hints at selective use, sparing legions for wars ahead. You rest briefly by a tent, water from a canteen cool on your lips, reflecting on how military codes echo slave sternness, both hierarchical, but soldiers with citizenship's thin veneer. For cowardice in battle, the ignominiosa missio dishonorable discharge strips ranks, banishing you to civilian obscurity, no pension, just shame. Imagine trading lorica for a tunic, whispers following like camp dogs. Another layer, tent mates policing each other, reporting lapses for collective drills, push-ups en masse or shield holds till arms quake. You're grunting in unison, the burn building bonds or breaking wills. The afternoon wanes, light slanting golden across the palisades as you join a mock skirmish. Punishments for insubordination include castigatio, light flogging with the centurion's staff, more sting than scar, a reminder tapped on shoulders. But for repeated offenses, escalation, assignment to vanguard, first into fray, cannon fodder by code. You're at the front line, spears bristling, heart pounding as horns blare. Quirky fringe. Some generals used shaming parades, offenders marching in women's clothes, eliciting jeers, humiliation over harm, turning machismo on its head. Light joke incoming. If you lost your sword, did they make you fight with a spoon? Close improvised weapons drills as penance. These group-based corrections tie back to treason's cliffs. Military betrayal often meant decimation amplified, whole legions thinned. You're feeling the camaraderie crack under pressure, the narrative marching you toward dusk. In imperial times, emperors like Claudius refined rules, adding bounties for self-policing, rewarding snitches with extra wine. Deeper drills unfold, for sleeping on watch. The offender stands vigil extra nights, eyes heavy, owls hooting companionship. You're nodding off, jolted awake by patrols, the stars your silent judges. Sensory immersion, the crackle of watchfires, the chill seeping through cloak, the faint snore of sleeping comrades. Historians debate efficacy. Did harshness win wars or spark revolts like the Batavian uprising? Accounts vary, from Appian's precision to Tacitus's drama. As evening falls, torches flicker to life, casting dancing shadows on tent walls. You're wrapping up the day, aches settling in, connecting these drills to broader codes, peculiar in their precision, soothing in their structure. The camp quiets, a hush blanketing the ranks, whispers of spectacles ahead drifting on the night air. The camp's hush lingers like a held breath, torches casting flickers that blend with starlight as you step from the ordered rows of tents into the chaotic pulse of Rome's public spaces. You're trading the disciplined dust of the legion for the roar of the arena, where punishments morph into spectacles, blending justice with entertainment under the noonday sun. You're squeezing through a crowd now, the Colosseum's stone arches looming, the air thick with sweat, cheers, and the faint tang of spilled wine. Public spectacle sanctions weren't just about correction. They were theater, scripted to awe and admonish, turning lawbreakers into lessons for all. You're clutching a crust of bread, elbowed by eager spectators as the arena's sand glints below, ready to soak up more than just sweat. A mainstream historical fact, under Roman law, public punishments like damnatio ad bestias, condemning criminals to face wild beasts, served as both penalty and propaganda, especially from the Republic's later years into the Empire, reinforcing social order through visceral displays. You're in the stands, heart thumping, as a condemned thief faces a snarling leopard. The crowd's roar drowning out his pleas. It's not random. Magistrates chose crimes like robbery or sacrilege for these fates, ensuring the spectacle matched the offense's weight. The beast's claws rake the sand, a grim reminder of the state's claws gripping society. But here's the quirky tidbit. Some offenders, especially for lesser crimes like fraud, face damnatio ad ludum, forced to train as gladiators, less death sentence, more brutal career change, fighting for freedom or at least a fan base. Imagine you're handed a wooden sword, thrust into training, muscles aching as you parry under a trainer's glare. The crowd's laughter, your new boss. It's a second chance, sort of, with a side of public humiliation. Historians still argue whether these spectacles deterred crime or just fed Rome's bloodlust, with graffiti from Pompeii suggesting crowds loved the drama more than the moral. The debate swells, fueled by arena inscriptions and cynical poet quips. You're settling into a stone seat, the heat of it seeping through your tunic as trumpets signal the next act. For arsonists, it's fire-based irony, burned at stakes in smaller venues. flames crackling as warnings to urban pyros. Sensory pull. The acrid smoke stings your eyes. The crowd's gasps pulse like a heartbeat. The sand gritty under distant sandals. Light joke. Bet arsonists wished they'd stuck to candlelit dinners instead. Safer ambience. These events were choreographed. Magistrates ensured variety. Beasts one day, mock naval battles another, keeping boredom at bay while justice played out. The arena's shadow shifts as clouds pass, cooling your face briefly. For religious crimes like defiling a temple, offenders might face noxie rolls, unarmed fodder for trained fighters, odds stacked worse than a rigged dice game. You're imagining the sprint across the sand, dodging a trident, knowing survival's a long shot. Quirky twist, some survived, earning freedom through crowd favor. Like reality TV with higher stakes, you're cheering despite yourself, caught in the mob's fever, wondering if mercy's in the cards today. Deeper layers unfold. In imperial times, emperors like Nero amped up spectacles, adding theatrical flair, criminals reenacting myths like playing Icarus with real falls. You're wincing at the staging, a netted offender flying before beasts pounce, the crowd eating it up like popcorn at a tragedy. Scholarly debates dig into economics. Did arenas profit from ticket sales, or was it state-funded propaganda? Evidence from Pliny's letters suggests both, with emperors footing bills to curry favor. You're tallying sesterces in your head, the cost of justice steep as the stands. Light aside, if you fumbled the script in those myth plays, did you get a bad review, or just eaten? Probably both. Rome loved multitasking. These sanctions tied to military decimations. Both used groups to enforce lessons, but arenas turned punishment public, amplifying shame. You're weaving through the exiting crowd now, dodging spilled cups as a petty forger takes the sand, sentenced to fight with blunt weapons, a slow grind to redemption or ruin. The sun dips lower, painting the arches golden as you reflect on spectacle's pull. For women, rarer but recorded like poisoners, it's often poisoning reenacted, forced to drink harmless but humiliating concoctions before jeering masses. You're imagining the bitter taste. The crowd's taunts a bitterer pill. Another facet. Condemned slaves might face beasts alongside free criminals, equality in punishment if not life. The roar fades as gates close but echoes linger, justice as showbiz seared into memory. Sensory immersion, the crunch of nutshells underfoot, the distant roar of a lion, the heat radiating from stone. Quirky fringe. Some spectacles included mock executions where offenders died theatrically, spared at the last second for crowd-pleasing twists. You're holding your breath, waiting for the emperor's thumb. The tension a shared pulse with thousands. Light joke incoming. Imagine the stage fright, forget your lines, and the lion's your understudy. These displays balance deterrence with distraction, keeping Rome's masses loyal and entertained. You're drifting toward the exits, the city's hum reclaiming the air, connecting back to slave code's sternness, both controlled through visibility, one private, one public. The evening breeze cools your brow, carrying whispers of quieter punishments like banishments waiting beyond the city's gates. Scholarly notes vary. Some argue spectacles desensitized, others say they're unified. You're feeling the narrative's rhythm slow, the day's heat easing, as the stars hint at exile's solitary paths ahead. The arena's roar fades into the city's evening hum, the Colosseum's arches receding as you wander Rome's quieter fringes, where the air smells of olive groves and distant sea salt. You're leaving behind the spectacle's clamor for the subtle sting of exile, a punishment that trades blood for absence, casting offenders into a world of whispers and solitude. You're trudging along the Via Appia now, dust clinging to your sandals, a knapsack heavy with just enough to survive. Exile's not the flash of the Tarpeian rock or the arena's roar. It's a slow fade, a deliberate erasure from Rome's vibrant tapestry, leaving you to haunt the edges of empire. The stars above twinkle like distant memories, each step pulling you further from home, a mainstream historical fact. Exile, or relegatio, was a formal penalty under Roman law, especially from the Republic onward, stripping citizens of rights and banishing them to far-flung islands or provinces, often for political crimes like sedition or corruption, preserving order without bloodshed. You're the banished, standing at the city's gates, guards checking your decree, their faces impassive as stone. The road stretches endlessly, leading to places like Pandataria or distant Gaul, where you'll live among strangers, your name a cautionary tale back home. It's a quiet sentence, but heavy like carrying the forum's weight in your chest. Here's the quirky tidbit. Some exiles were allowed to keep wealth, but forbidden to write letters home, turning them into ghosts who could afford villas but not connections. Imagine the loneliness. Pen poised over blank parchment, words forbidden. You're picturing a seaside villa, waves crashing below but no one to share the view with, your only company the gull's cries. Historians still argue whether exile was merciful or crueler than death, with Cicero's own banishment letters lamenting it as a living tomb, while others, like Ovid, spun poetry from their pain. The debate lingers, pieced from exiles' writings and imperial edicts, no clear verdict. You're walking the Appian Way, the crunch of gravel a steady rhythm as moonlight silvers the tombs lining the road. For senators caught in bribes like those during Catiline's plots, exile meant losing status, your toga praetexta swapped for plain cloth, your voice silenced in the Senate. Sensory pull. The cool night air brushes your skin, the faint scent of cypress, the distant howl of a dog echoing your isolation. Light joke. Bet exiles invented travel blogs. Too bad no one in Rome could read them. The punishment varied. Aqua et igni interdictio, denial of fire and water, meant no one could legally aid you, turning neighbors into strangers overnight. You pause by a milestone, its carved numbers worn but readable, marking miles from Rome's heart. For women like Julia under Augustus for scandalous affairs, islands like Pandataria became gilded cages, luxury without liberty, a paradox of punishment. You're imagining her pacing marble floors, sea views mocking her confinement, no festivals to attend. Quirky fringe, some exiles received companion bans where even family couldn't follow, ensuring solitude's bite was sharp. You're alone now, save for the chirp of crickets, each note a reminder of Rome's distant buzz. The scholarly debate swirls. Did exile deter political intrigue or just export it, with banished nobles stirring trouble abroad? Evidence from Tacitus suggests both. Some faded quietly, others schemed from afar. You're reflecting on this, leaning against a tree, bark rough under your palm. For lesser crimes like slandering a magistrate, temporary relegation to nearby towns sufficed. No island needed, just enough distance to cool tempers. You're in a sleepy village, locals eyeing you warily, your Roman accent a giveaway. It's less dramatic than Beasts, but the shame lingers like damp cloth. Light aside, probably where sent to the countryside became code for disgrace. Just add goats and boredom. Exile tied to arena spectacles. Both removed threats, one loudly, one silently, but both public in their message. You're trudging further, stars guiding your path as you recall treason's cliffs. Exile often a prelude for failed plotters, a chance to flee before the rocks drop. Another layer, property confiscation paired with banishment, halving wealth to fund Rome's coffers, a financial lash to match the emotional one. The night deepens, the road quieter, only your footsteps breaking the silence. In imperial times, emperors like Tiberius refined exile, choosing remote spots to isolate voices like Agrippina's, her wit silenced by waves. You're on that ship now, sails creaking, the horizon endless, feeling the salt spray's sting. For religious offenders like Christians later, exile to mines replaced islands, blending labor with banishment, digging ore until bones ached. You're hefting a pickaxe in your mind, the clink rhythmic, exhaustion a new captor, sensory immersion, the crunch of leaves underfoot, the faint tang of dust, the chill settling into your cloak. Light joke incoming. If you sent a postcard from exile, would it read, "Wish you weren't here"? Probably. Romans loved their irony. These quiet expulsions reshaped lives, forcing reinvention far from the forum's pulse. You're connecting back to slave punishments, both stripped identity, one through labor, one through distance. But both controlled the narrative, deeper quirks. Some exiles faced recall if emperors changed, a rare lifeline dangled by politics. You're dreaming of Rome's skyline, temples glowing in memory, but the road keeps you moving. Scholarly notes vary. Some argue exile's leniency saved lives. Others say it broke spirits more than swords. The stars wheel above, whispering of fines and forfeitures next. Their gleam a faint promise of rest as the narrative drifts onward.